Terve, minun nimesi on Sara. Tervetuloa Overkill Reviews. This is BangerTV's weekly heavy metal review show. Things have been busy over here, and I wanted to bring it up because you've seen him on camera. Sadly, my very elderly cat Odin passed away in January, and we've since adopted a very spunky little dog named Tina Tintin. Tina, this is her. This is Tina. So yeah, you probably will see her on camera. She's a bit of a ding-dong. She's very fun. All right, away you go. Okay, let's get to the music. This week I am reviewing the fourth studio album by my favorite active Finnish band. This band has been dubbed black metal by fans, but they personally identify as heavy metal and they reject the black metal moniker. On their fourth studio album, they're further exploring new sonic realms. That was the track Tavastland by Finnish metal outfit Havukruunu. The video is comprised of footage from YLE, which is the national broadcasting company of Finland. The song is featured on Havukruunu's fourth studio album, which is also called Tavastland and is out today via Svart Records. Okay, it's time for a bio. And before I get into the bio, Suomi on niin vaikea kieli. So I am struggling. I'm learning Finnish. I live in Finland. I'm half Finnish, but I'm still messing up Finnish pronunciation, obviously, as you do when you learn a new language. But I'm going to try to be as faithful to the language as I can be, but there will be some errors, so apologies in advance. Okay, now we can actually talk about the band. Havukruunu formed in 2005 in Hausjärvi, Kanta-Hammi. Their name translates from Finnish to coniferous crown, and the band sings exclusively in their native tongue of Finnish. They lyrically focus on darkness, loneliness, sadness, winter, and Finnish paganism. How very Finnish of them. They are spearheaded by vocalist and guitarist Stefa, and the band released their debut Havukruunu in 2015, on which Stefa played all instruments and did the vocals. As the band lineup expanded, Havukruunu released the fantastic Kelle Suuret Soi, which is here behind me in 2017, and then they followed that up with 2020's Oinois Soimen Soita in 2020, and I named that record one of my top 2 best albums of the year. But this record in particular, I keep playing it over and over and over. As of today, the band is comprised of Stefa, bassist Humö, drummer Kostajainen, and second guitarist Henkka. And I just wanted to point out here that Henkka, the guitarist, is also a live member of Smolder. It is a conflict of interest. That's why I wanted to be upfront about it. Anyhow, Havukruunu are now signed to renowned Finnish label Svart Records, who you might know from doing a lot of the Roman Bazaar reissues, and they have left Näkärmak Productions. And quite frankly, right now, they seem poised to become one of the next big bands of heavy metal. How does their shifting sonic trajectory materialize on their fourth album, Tavastland? Let's find out. I want to be crystal clear about this. Part of what drew me to Havukruunu so strongly is the band's consistent evolution. I discovered them around the time that Kelle Suuret Soi was released, and back then I really enjoyed what to me sounded like a merging of latter era Bathory with At the Heart of Winter era Immortal. And when I say this, what I mean is that Havukruunu had heavy metal, power metals, melodic and like groovy approach, but within a black metal guise, courtesy of the howling vocals and the tremolo picking and the blasting drums. This is music that feels icy and dramatic, but not like a cheap copy of its influences. And of course, when I got into them, I went back and I checked out the debut, and it was more ferocious and incessant than what followed. Then Havukruunu released Oinois Soimen Soita, and I was truly impressed with the band as a whole at this point. They were now shifting more into a moon sorrow style of pagan black metal, and the music became more varied in speed and emotional impact. And Havukruunu was also integrating like more layered vocals and alternate instrumentation. With Tavastland, they are continuing down this path. The band is shifting farther away from black metal and more into a general extreme metal / heavy metal sound. Not that the genre demarker really matters, but what they're doing is it doesn't feel like a shift that's so dramatic that it feels incongruent. Instead, it sounds and feels mature and fresh and exciting and more sonically free, as if they gave themselves permission to put together all these disparate pieces and go outside the black metal box, so to speak. I'd like to play a really stellar example of this on my favorite track from the album, which is titled Kuoleman Oma. First up, you're going to hear the intro with haunting cello, which is played by bandleader Stefa's partner. So after this beautiful cello introduction, cello integration, the song then shifts into mid-paced and pulsating with an indomitable groove. And you are then treated throughout the track to a variety of vocal styles. And I think that this is a very strong suit within the album. First, you're hearing Stefa's characteristically growling, kind of shrieking, very Corthon-esque, I would say, vocals. But then we get our layered backing choir vocals as well. Let's listen to a clip of that. Of course, it wouldn't be a Havukruunu song if it didn't transition into their characteristically blazing and icy style, which is complete with great solos. Here's an example of that. So yeah, you've now heard almost a minute and a half of this track, and I wish I didn't have to pick out clips. I've said it before, I'll say it again, but this whole song is great, and I definitely recommend listening to the record when you're done watching this review. And next, I want to discuss the thematic approach of the album, because that is one of the best parts of Havukruunu, is how thematically consistent they are. Another thing that drew me to Havukruunu very early was the whole package approach. I've talked about this comprehensively in other reviews, but a band generally transcends from decent into great when they tie together all the elements into a tight, congruent package and care about the aesthetic whole. For Havukruunu, that means embracing the black and white, hand-drawn, haunted aesthetic, which mirrors their naturalistic and personal themes and ragged, icy sound. Live, they similarly offer no unnecessarily extraneous frills. They just rock the fuck out, and they're very tight live. On Tavastland, they've gone a few steps further by incorporating samples from the ULE archives to help set the mood and the theme. I'm not going to play those samples for you because they are in Finnish, and you won't understand them probably unless you're from Finland, and then you will understand them. But both the first track, which is dubbed Havukruunu ja Julmaton Laulun Henki, and the closing track, which is dubbed De Miseris Fenorum, they have samples. And these samples iterate the theme of the record, Tavastland, which is the region and history of Tavastland, which is the southwestern province in Finland that has been occupied since the Stone Age. Now, I'm going to read a quote from Stefa about the theme, because he can explain better than I can. Tavastland tells how in 1237, the Tavastians rose in a rebellion against the Church of Christ and drove the popes naked into the frost to die. Tavastland reveals our fathers' centuries-old sins and lies of consolation. Tavastland speaks of him who has become a prisoner of his own home, alienated from the land on the forest. On that note, I interviewed Stefa for Decibel magazine, and he gave me far more insight into the inspirations and reasoning behind the thematic approach to the band. Because essentially, singing in Finnish was a choice due to the indigenous pagan polytheism history of Finland, because Finland has a long history of paganism and magic. This is intimately intertwined into the language itself, which is agglutinative and is a lot more flexible than English. And I don't really know how to explain that better, but I would recommend that you look it up. I could go through a whole history here, especially as someone who is clumsily attempting to learn the language currently. But instead, I would recommend reading the 1880 book. It is called The Magic Song of the Finns. I have a copy of that here. And also reading the Kalevala, which is the national epic of Finland, national epics. You know, the Mahabharata is a national epic, so is the Iliad, so is the Odyssey. They'll provide some really interesting history and context for you, and will also teach you a lot about the artistic approach and theme of Havukruunu. They're grooving. I somewhat addressed this in point one, but I think it's relevant to highlight it again or more clearly. Basically, when Tavastland goes hard, it goes hard. And I'm actually reminded of this Black Sabbath meme that keeps floating around the internet, which very aptly features the line, they're grooving. And that's what's going on in Tavastland. Whether the band is becoming spacey and explorative or if they're doing groove and black metal. And I'm going to show you how this materializes in a single track. This is a section of Kun veri sekoitu lumiin. After this portion, the song effortlessly then progresses into something really Hallis-inspired that's spacey and atmospheric. I quite like how it progresses into the end of the song. It's not that this approach is new for Havukruunu, as they did something quite similar with the closing track Täti yö ja hevoset, which closed out Oina soimin soitta, but I like to hear it more prominently within the album and interlaced with the music itself, which it is within Tavastland. Let's listen to a section of that spacey exploration, which I'm sure live is going to get heads banging and hotties dancing, without a doubt. After the clip we just played you ends, this continues for another full minute, giving space for the band to explore and stay locked into this groove, which just has that, it's great. Grooves. They're grooving. Overall, I'm very impressed with Tavastland. I've seen consistent feedback across social media and heard from many friends about this record, and several of them have already dubbed this the album of the year. I think February is far too premature to make that kind of declaration, but I do simultaneously suspect that this will, at the very least, make my top 10 list of 2025. Also, before I deliver the verdict, I had to shout this part out because I really appreciate that a band who really came from the Bathory school of thought dubbed their album Tavastland, just like Bathory released a thematic album called The Nordlands, you know? I had to say it. So, as a Bathory devotee. Tavastland is an emotionally impactful, varied, and engaging album by a band whose artistry is improving with time and is never standing still. And I fucking appreciate that. That to me is art. For all those reasons, it's getting the unusually high score of 4.5 skulls out of 5 here on Overkill Reviews. Before I do the shout-outs, I've got a gig shout-out. If you're based in Helsinki, Havukruunu is having their album release party tonight with extraterrestrial speed metal outfit Emissary. There's a link to the show in the video description. And I also wanted to talk about bands from Finland that I really dig who are making cool music. I already mentioned Emissary as they're playing the release show, so instead I'm going to recommend their counterpart band, which is long-running Finnish speed metal outfit Ranger, who released Ulos Ranoista, Risen from the Ruins in 2022. Next up, I have a more recent shout out, which is a new release by Iron Griffin. The band released a spectacular Storm of Magic in 2022, and in January of 2025, they released a 3-track kind of EP, I suppose the best way to put it, called Gate Tower. Gate Tower is unusual in the context of the previous 2 albums by Iron Griffin, which saw vocals handed by Maya, whereas Gate Tower is a 3-track release, once again featuring vocals by Oskari, who is the multi-instrumentalist behind the band. He also handled vocals on the debut EP. He sounds like a demented wizard. It's very cool. Now, if you're interested in more info about heavy metal in Finland, I would recommend you check out the Overkill Global Primers that I did on Finnish death metal and Finnish doom metal. Links are in the video description. Metal Scene has really produced a lot of killer metal, and I'd love to do updated primers, but I am out of time. So thanks for watching, and kiitos katsomisesta. Hey, hey. Bye.